Traditional South Asian clothing can appear dense with overlapping fabric and intricate layers. Yet almost everything we see rests on the same recurring element, a single rectangular, unstitched length of cloth. Look closely at this ancient stone bust from the Indus Valley civilization. You can clearly see a shawl neatly draped over the figure's left shoulder. This tradition of wrapping cloth goes back nearly 5,000 years, existing long before the needle took hold in the region. On this technical diagram, notice the men on the left. By pleating and tucking that single piece of fabric, they create a secure lower garment known as a dhoti. Men manipulate this same rectangular cloth into different forms, like the tubular lungi. In this painting, look at the diverse array of colored headwear worn by the men walking alongside the horses. The specific cloth, color, and wrapping style of a turban directly communicate a wearer's geographic region, community, and specific lineage. For millennia, South Asian fashion was an exercise in pure geometry. Instead of cutting cloth into shapes and sewing it together, people mastered the tension, folds, and tucks needed to wear fabric exactly as it came off the loom. For women, this unstitched rectangle is called the sari. Because it is never locked into a fixed shape by seams, a single length of fabric can be worn in over 100 distinct styles. Look at these side and back views of a woman in Tamil Nadu. This specific draping technique creates a striking fan effect of pleats gathered across her lower back, radically altering her natural silhouette. Transforming 6 yards of flat fabric into a secure garment requires spatial mechanics. Anchor points are tucked into the waist. Deep front pleats allow for walking, while remaining yardage drapes over the shoulder. The structure holds purely through friction. But if you look at a sari worn today, you will spot a contradiction. Underneath that masterful drape, women almost always wear a stitched waist slip and a tightly fitted, meticulously tailored blouse called a choli. If the region's ancient foundation is entirely unstitched cloth, where did all these precise cuts and seams actually come from? The physical silhouette of the subcontinent began to shift with the arrival of Islamic conquerors and eventually the rise of the Mughal Empire. They brought a new set of requirements for life and war. These groups originated in harsh, freezing steppe environments where survival depended on horseback riding. You cannot ride a horse effectively or stay warm in freezing winds while wrapped in loose, unstitched cloth. They required highly functional, stitched clothing. Look at the clothing on this 17th century Mughal nobleman. He is wearing a tailored, long-sleeved coat and underneath it, tight-fitting, gathered pants. The needle and thread had officially arrived as everyday wear. This era also introduced new standards of public modesty, specifically the requirement for women to cover their upper bodies. To adapt, Hindu women across northern India began adopting the stitched choli blouse to wear permanently underneath their draped saris. The imported tailoring of the north was quite literally stitched directly into the indigenous drape traditions of the south, creating a permanent hybrid wardrobe. By the late 18th century, a new power arrived, and they weaponized clothing in an entirely different way. The British East India Company began aggressively dismantling India's self-sustaining textile ecosystem. Look at the sheer scale of this mechanized British weaving shed. The company exported raw Indian cotton, fed it into industrial looms in the UK, and flooded the Indian market with mass-produced Manchester cloth, devastating millions of local handweavers. Alongside economic extraction came moral policing. Victorian British administrators looked at the climate-appropriate draped garments of the tropics and deemed them inappropriate, pushing local populations to adopt what they considered proper European dress. In this studio portrait, you can see the direct result of that moral pressure. Beneath their traditional saris, these women are wearing dark, long-sleeved, high-necked Victorian blouses. Many Indian men transitioned completely into European suits. During the British Raj, tailoring and imported cloth shifted from being tools of cultural exchange into instruments of economic exploitation and moral control. As the 20th century independence movement gained momentum, the textile trade transformed again. This time, clothing became a political battleground. Mahatma Gandhi, an English-educated lawyer, deliberately stripped away his tailored Western suits. He adopted the simplest unstitched garment available, the standard cotton dhoti, turning his own body into a highly visible symbol of anti-colonial resistance. Look at this iconic photograph. Gandhi is sitting on the floor, actively spinning raw cotton on a traditional wheel called a charka. This was the birth of the khadi, or homespun, movement. He asked every Indian citizen to start spinning their own yarn. In this image, you can see a massive crowd marching through the streets, completely unified in white, homespun khadi cloth. Wearing this unstitched, hand-loomed fabric was a devastating economic boycott against British factories and a reclamation of a shared identity. After independence, India's leaders forged a new aesthetic. Look at Jawaharlal Nehru here. He is wearing a highly tailored band collar jacket, but paired with the white homespun khadi cap. It was a calculated blend of crisp Western tailoring and Indian aesthetics, projecting modern, unified sovereignty. Modern Indian fashion acts as a wearable map, a pluralistic tapestry that absorbed centuries of foreign cuts and stitches without ever discarding its ancient,